Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. When I have a piece of how-to-do life advice that doesn't require a long explanation, I post it on Twitter. Their very concision may make them more useful. Well, here are some of my recent favorites, some of which I've improved from the version that appears on Twitter. The first group is for personal growth. Ask yourself and others, what do people misunderstand about you? Journaling lets you step back to reflect. It's empowering because you generate your own solutions, which are likely useful because you know yourself. Plus, it's free. Emulate what you admire in your parents. We'll more likely succeed at developing our parents' attributes than other people's. That's because you've inherited their genes, received their parenting, plus you love them. Write your life's memorable moments, from early childhood to today. You see any threads? Any implications for what you should do now? Write your obituary. Doing that often yields self-knowledge and directions for life. For example, today, my client's writing his obituary is making him think about leaving his partner. Have an experimental mindset. Instead of excessive rumination, take low-risk actions and monitor the results. That applies both at work and in your personal life. A way to build in a new habit is to log your progress and lack thereof on a memo pad. That's useful, for example, in procrastination, weight management, and substance abuse. Do you ever find yourself not finishing a task? At that moment of truth, remind yourself that it's far easier to maintain the momentum than to say, "Oh, I'll do it later," and then have to start with no momentum. Procrastinators jump from the unpleasant to the pleasant, even when that hurts them long term. Do you need to get comfortable being uncomfortable? Disagree sparingly. You pay a price each time you disagree, let alone criticize. Assess whether it's worth that price. Often it is, but less often than many people think. It's usually more efficacious to value yourself more on your efforts, your accomplishments, and your ethics than on identity, religious, racial, gender, or geography, like I'm a Californian. To move our sessions from the purely intellectual, I ask my career and life coaching clients to get in touch with what they're feeling as I play some music that I write in the piano. That's often revealing. If you want to do that, you might Google Marty Nemko and romantic piano theme piano on Google videos, YouTube videos, and you'll find it. For subclinical anxiety or sadness, it may be wise not to discuss it, but to stay busy, especially doing things that you're particularly good at or that help others. Exercise can also help with subclinical anxiety or sadness. Gurus often imply that low self-esteem is an irrationally negative self-assessment. Often it's rational, and thus can be a signal that you should try to improve. While it defies traditional psychotherapists' conventional wisdom, my clients and I have found that a useful antidote to garden variety sadness and anxiety is not more processing of it, but to suppress the thought and distract yourself by taking a baby step forward on some constructive task or pleasurable activity. Don't necessarily accept as valid the praise from people you pay, like counselors and teachers. Why? Because their praising you boosts the chance you'll keep paying or that you'll write a better online review. Movies, TV, books, and so on venerate the rebel and the quirky creative. Underappreciated is the straight arrow, who would rather have more fun being off-center, but whose sense of responsibility trumps that. Following is all these are my words, but this is the only one that's a quote. It's from Saul Bellow in his book, The Adventures of Augie March. He writes, "People knock themselves out over difficult goals because they thought that difficulty is a sign of it being the right thing. Actually, it comes easily or not at all." A fortune cookie reads, "Overconfidence is equal to being blind." To expand on that, people who crow loud and proud often make blanket pronouncements that insufficiently incorporate worthy other ideas and data. Give based on potential, not deficit. As every medic knows, it's wise to devote limited resources not necessarily to the sickest, but to those with more potential to profit. I'm speaking about battlefield medics. A side effect of the pandemic is that more people are comfortable with virtual sessions with counselors, doctors, and so on. Also, self-help apps such as Sanvello, Sanvello, should burgeon. Post-COVID, their use will likely keep growing as maddening car traffic and time-sucking mass transit resume. Now let's turn to some tips about relationships. The power of saying thank you is that it conveys "you're right" without being conceited. Famed psychotherapist Irv Yalom's go-to question for getting to know someone: would you walk me through a typical day, starting with when you wake up, perhaps a day earlier this week? Listen, for example, for the role of people and tasks in what they say. Some people who have the gift of looks, charisma, or sex appeal use it to unfair advantage. View a person based on the whole person and overall behavior. It's head-shaking that in choosing a long-term relationship partner, we pay so much attention to looks, which is unearned. Can the biological imperative be so strong? Probably so. Couples may spend too much time remediating weaknesses. Focus more on the good that comes naturally, whether sex, chatting, watching TV together, whatever. It's popular to call disagreement with a partner gaslighting, but sometimes one person is more often correct. Movies, songs, novels all extol the primacy of love, yet in the real world, most people seem cold. Why? Books and movies glorify the badass, but badasses tend to project more confidence than competence and tend to demotivate others. Better to work with and be in relationships with gentler, more authentic souls. Leniency is often unwise. For example, at home, a romantic partner who promised to do the dishes but, quote, forgot, is more likely to, quote, forget more often. Tantruming that works is likely to spawn more tantruming. To gain a child's compliance, get down to the child's size, on their knee perhaps, and kindly but firmly say, for example, you have 30 seconds to finish with that iPad. If your child refuses, say that you know that he or she is better than that and take the iPad. You have the right to reasonable compliance. Better a plain school with good kids and teachers than a fancy school with poor role models. People endure the strains of family, believing they can count on them in a pinch, and they'll accept you with love, even if you're not a saint. Alas, in many families, such expectations are over-optimistic. Family has long been deemed central, in part because having kids was expected and because women had limited earning power and/or desire. That's changing. With so many people bitter about their family, it may be that family, along with marriage, will become atavistic. Work. These 5 tips are about work. A potent anti-procrastination tactic? Ask yourself, what's my next 1-second step? Right before I give a talk or record my podcast, I sit for 5 minutes letting whatever float into my head. I'll jot down anything of value, for example, the word integrity, or some important idea to share that I had forgotten about. A rule of thumb for managers who have a supervisee who disagrees: listen, acknowledge why they would feel that way, decide, and then, if he or she wants to continue the debate, move on. Pace the amount of new information you provide because people get overwhelmed. Intersperse explanations, examples, and maybe humor. That's true also of the good fiction writer. Even if they want to move the plot forward, it can't come too fast. A teacher is more likely to be effective if building on the simple rather than explaining the complex. For example, if I were teaching adults the art of writing, I might start with page 1 of a wonderful children's book and ask them what they like and don't like about it. Career contentment mainly comes from work of moderate challenge, good boss, co-workers, stability, and pay. Because of supply and demand, those are more likely to be present outside of entertainment and in so-called make-a-difference careers. And finally, a few tips about health. When preparing for a physical exam, inventory yourself from head to toe, and then from your morning to night, to bedtime. That'll remind you of what to ask about. Most dieters gain it back and often more. Unless you're obese, consider accepting the weight at which your body wants to be. Fine, nibble away at your calorie consumption, but accept yourself, including the occasional cheat. As we observe our peers go from running to striding to trudging to needing help, we slowly are trained to accept the inevitable. And finally, in these stressful times, gardening, even if it's just your indoor plants, can be a respite from the maelstrom. In any event, I do thank you for watching. I'm Marty Nemko. I welcome your thumbs up and accept your thumbs down. I always look forward to your comments and especially like it if you hit the share button below, share on your social media so that my efforts can have broader impact. And I am flattered if you choose to subscribe to my channel. In any event, I do thank you for watching. I am Marty Nemko.